Max Weber famously argued that modernity stripped the world of enchantment. The old religious certainties faded, the sacred order dissolved, and what remained was a rationalized world of systems, procedures, and institutions. But something curious happened along the way. Many ancient practices survived the loss of belief: meditation, prayer, chanting. Even among people who no longer are certain that the metaphysical claims behind them are true. In my own case, before recording many of these videos, I do something that might sound unusual. I chant. For example, sometimes I repeat a traditional mantra like this: Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, for a few minutes to an hour of rhythmic repetition, not because I'm certain about the worldview behind it. In fact, I'm largely agnostic about that now. But after years of doing it, I've noticed something difficult to ignore. My breathing steadies, my voice becomes fuller, my mind becomes clearer, and the recording process suddenly requires far fewer retakes. So that raises an interesting question. If belief fades, but the practice still seems to work, what exactly is happening? In this video, I want to explore chanting not as a religious claim, but as a human technique, one that may have surprisingly concrete effects on the nervous system, the voice, and the mind. If chanting still seems to have real effects, even for people like me who are uncertain about its metaphysical claims, then the next step is obvious. We should ask a simpler question. What is happening to the body? One place to start is breathing. Most forms of chanting naturally slow the breath. Each phrase extends the exhale, and the rhythm becomes regular. Modern research shows that slower, more controlled breathing has measurable effects on the nervous system. It activates what is called the parasympathetic response, a part of the nervous system associated with calm, stability, and recovery. Heart rate slows, stress hormones decline, attention becomes steadier. In other words, chanting quietly pushes the body toward a regulated state. But breathing is also only part of the story. Chanting also produces sustained vibration in the throat and chest. Those vibrations stimulate the vagus nerve, one of the major pathways through which the brain communicates with the body's internal organs. The vagus nerve plays a central role in emotional regulation. It influences heart rate, the digestion, and the sense of calm or safety. This is why practices like humming, singing, and chanting often produce similar effects. They engage the body in a rhythmic pattern that signals things are stable. Finally, there is rhythm itself. Repetition, especially vocal repetition, tends to quiet the constant stream of internal dialogue. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a form of attentional entrainment. The mind stops jumping rapidly from thought to thought and instead settles into a predictable pattern. Across cultures, different traditions discovered this same principle. Buddhist mantras, Christian rosaries, Islamic dhikr, Gregorian chant. Different beliefs, but remarkably similar techniques, which suggests that chanting may not only be a religious act, it may also be something more basic, a way of using breath, sound, and rhythm to regulate the human nervous system. When I chant before recording a video, I notice several things almost immediately. My breathing becomes slower, the tension in my voice drops, and the sound itself becomes fuller, more resonant. The difference is noticeable enough that I usually need far fewer retakes. Part of that effect comes from the voice itself. Chanting is essentially an extended vocal warm-up. Singers often begin practice with sustained tones or humming for the same reason. When the vocal cords vibrate for an extended period of time, Blood flow increases, and the muscles respond for phonation become more coordinated. Breath support improves, resonance increases. The voice becomes more stable. But there is also a psychological component. When breathing slows and the nervous system settles, the subtle agitation that often interferes with speech begins to fade. The voice reflects that change. Sentences land more evenly. Pacing becomes steadier, and what listeners often interpret as confidence may simply be the sound of a nervous system that is no longer under stress. In that sense, chanting does not only communicate belief, it also shapes the state of the person performing it. What makes chanting particularly interesting is that it is not unique to one religion or even to one part of the world. Across civilizations, humans developed remarkably similar practices. In Buddhist traditions, mantras are repeated rhythmically for extended periods. The mantra I repeat is actually from a Buddhist tradition. In Christianity, monks chant the Psalms and believers recite the Rosary. In Catholicism. In Islam, there is dhikr, the repetition of sacred phrases intended to focus the mind and heart. And of course, the 5 prayers a day are themselves expressed out loud, and they most of the time they sing surahs, which are from basically parts of the Quran out loud and in a way that is similar to chanting, though more geared towards prayer, obviously. In Hindu traditions, there is japa, the repetition of mantras using prayer beads. And in medieval Europe, Gregorian chant filled monasteries with slow, resonant vocal patterns. Different cultures, different theologies, but a strikingly similar structure. Breath slows, sound repeats, attention narrows, the body settles into rhythm. It is difficult to look at this pattern and conclude that it emerged only once. Instead, it appears that many civilizations independently discovered the same basic technique, a way of using breath, sound, and repetition to stabilize the mind. Which raises an intriguing possibility. Perhaps chanting was not only a religious expression, perhaps it was also an ancient form of psychological technology, a practical method for regulating attention, emotion, and the nervous system long before modern neuroscience existed. And in this sense, I recently did a video on Pareto, and he talks about residues and derivations, and it could be that chanting is kind of like was found out just experimentally, and then the derivation applied to it was something religious, and in essence, they figured it out and then said this is holy. I don't know, that's just a hypothesis. If this is true, then chanting reveals something interesting about the modern condition. Max Weber argued that the modern world had undergone a process of disenchantment. The religious frameworks that once gave meaning to everyday life began to dissolve. The universe became more rational, more procedural, more scientific. But disenchantment does not erase everything that came before it. Some practices remain. Sometimes they remain because people still believe in them, but sometimes they remain for a different reason. They remain because they work. Across centuries, human communities developed disciplines that shaped the body and the mind. Prayer, meditation, chanting, ritual. These practices were embedded in religious traditions and often justified by metaphysical claims about the nature of reality. Yet even when belief weakens, the practices themselves do not always disappear. Instead, they sometimes persist in a new form, not as expressions of certainty, but as techniques, ways of regulating attention, breath, emotion, and voice. From this perspective, chanting becomes less mysterious. It may be one of many ancient disciplines that helped human beings stabilize themselves long before the language of neuroscience existed. In a disenchanted world, the metaphysics may fade, but the practices that shape the human organism can still remain, not as relics of the past, but as reminders that long before modern science explained the mind, human cultures had already been experimenting with it. And perhaps that is why practices like chanting still appear, quietly, in a world that no longer fully believes in the cosmologies that created them. Not because modern people suddenly recovered ancient faith, but because some practices continue to shape the human mind and body, even after the beliefs that once surrounded them begin to fade. Anyway, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you're interested in this practice, I would be more than happy to explain it, and there is also a whole metaphysical side to it, though I don't personally believe in it anymore. There's an organization too there are two organizations. There is a schism that do this kind of chanting, but I'm no longer a part of those. I just do it because of the effects, and honestly, I started doing it again recently because of these videos. When I started YouTubing, I would listen to the videos at first and was kind of like thinking to myself, I just wasn't happy with how I sounded. I thought I didn't sound confident enough, and that I wasn't projecting enough, that I kind of came off as soft and timid. And I remembered that when I chanted, that wasn't the case. And I used to chant. I started chanting like when I was 20, so 20 years ago. And then when I chanted, I actually believed in it. But still, at that point in time, my friend who introduced me to it was like, just try it, see if you like it, and see if it does something for you. You don't have to believe in anything, but just try it, dude, because it works. And I was like, okay. And it did do something, and that's how they really get people, is it actually, and there's a whole science behind it. I've explained part of it, but it really does do something psychologically and physiologically. To me, it makes me more calm, it makes me more confident, and it definitely does something with the voice that is very desirable for YouTube. I mean, I know you guys probably can't tell because you don't know when I've chanted or before or not, but I certainly can tell the difference. It's a huge difference to me, and I just prefer how I sound with it. And also, there are psychological and physiological benefits, similar to that of meditation, with the added bonus that it's a little more active. Active as in energizing, and it's also a lot easier than meditation. I also tried meditation back in the day and have done a lot of it, and it's another thing that's healthy and good for you, and I would recommend if you can do it. But chanting is kind of like a shortcut. You get a lot of the same benefits and maybe some extra ones that you get from chanting, and maybe some that you're not getting certain benefits as well that you get from meditating, in terms of concentration and quieting the mind, though, to that degree, but you're still getting it, and it's just a lot easier to do. And then that active, energetic part, it's kind of like, it's like, it's like it's kind of like working out in a way, which is another thing I should get back into, and that is good for everyone. But yeah, it's activating. It has this activating energy to it that I can only explain as similar to after a workout, or it's just very different from meditation. I want to say that. And that said, I've tried almost every religion, but my faith tends to be really weak. Like I'll try something for a while, and at first I'm really into it, but then I just start questioning things too much, and unfortunately that kills it for me. I've tried every religion except for Judaism, because it's just the exclusivity of that religion is a turn off to me. But having tried other religions, I almost wish I could, in fact I do wish I could just believe in something and not question it, because I envy the certainty that religious people have, and the belief and just the meaning that they find in it. I would actually trade objective truths, quote unquote, to believe in something, I would say, I want to believe in this. I don't care if it's not true. And if I could make myself believe in it, I would do that. Just because I feel like the benefits, the utilitarian, like just plain utility, are are just worth it. And yeah, but that's just me. Anyway, if you're interested, and if you're interested also in the organization behind it, or the metaphysics behind it, I mean the religion behind it, I don't mind answering that either at all. I don't personally believe in them anymore, as I said, but I can also explain purely in a rational way. But it's something worth trying, just like meditation, and that has clear benefits. And you can try it. If you like it, keep it. If you don't, throw it away. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.